Hi, this is Kendra from Pencil and Pigment, and today I wanted to do an Art Reads book. Now this book is called Drawing Faces, Learn How to Draw Facial Expressions, Detailed Features, and Lifelike Portraits. This is by Lise Herzog, and this was published this year, April 2022, so it's only about 8 months old. And this book is a little over 100 pages, and it is sort of marketed to children. This is a book, sometimes books that are marketed to younger audiences are great beginning learning books for adults. So I kind of wanted to bring attention to that when getting books from the library and learning how to draw and paint and create and do art, the whole library is available, and to think outside of the box and peruse all the sections. So the grade level for this book under Amazon is stated a 3rd grade to 7th grade. Now if you're not in the United States, that is ages about 8 to 13. So I wanted to look at this book because this book sort of is more workbook than, I would say, like traditional book. While the paper is, it's smooth, it's thin, I would say for drawing, this would be a fine workbook to sort of fill in faces and practice. And there are blank pages in the back. I wouldn't use pen and ink in something like this to try and create. I want to talk about this book. For books that are marketed to children, see, here's a practice page. And it would be very easy to just supplement your own tracing paper to get an idea, and then move on to a sketchbook to build confidence and keep going over and practicing. I want to talk about representation, because when doing portrait drawing and drawing faces and people, it can be really easy to just pick sort of one ethno group to sort of draw and create from. But I think when it comes to books for children, books for artists, I think representation really matters. I think when you look at physical anthropology and you take something like eyes, eye shape, eyelids, how wide an eye is, and sometimes there isn't even an eyelid in some cultures and ethnicities. I think it's important to show that. Now this is just a very, very general couple pages dedicated to each portion, but there isn't a lot of representation. So I would say for this book, if you are learning to draw portraits and you just want a place to sort of doodle and practice, I would say this would make a very budget supplement to learning how to draw. I wouldn't say this would be the main drawing book for learning to draw portraits. Now it retails for $10 US. You can find some used versions on Amazon already for about $7. Here it's trying to show you line and facial hair, and then there's a bunch of practice pages. So if you're teaching students, this might be a great little supplement for them to purchase as a little workbook to work on. But know that representation matters, and people like to see themselves represented. So when you look at noses from around the world, some are wider, some slope up, some slope down, depending on which group and ethnicity it is. So while they do cover a range of ages, these all look pretty like a Caucasoid to me. I'm not seeing other groups represented in here, and I think that's an important touchstone as artists. Now, doing publications, creating publications, it's a lot of work. Whether you go through a publisher or you self-publish, it is an absolute ton of work. So I appreciate this very gentle entry into portrait drawing and facial expressions, and trying to show you the arches and the forms and the shapes to get you going. I think that this could be paired with something like Pinterest, where they type in model face, full view, and they could get a wider range of people from different cultures and countries. Get somebody that's from Kenya, get somebody that is Native American, get somebody from Iceland, get somebody that's Maori, get some different groups and different folks on here. Get somebody that is South Korean, somebody that is Vietnamese. Get some different faces and practice that and look at the differences. This is going to be a great teaching tool for inclusion, for drawing. I don't know if I handed this to my twin 11-year-olds, I don't know that this would be enough to get them to create something like this. I think even though it's marketed for someone that young, I think this is a ways to go, because you need to learn shading and some of the subtle differences with that. If you're trying to create hair and understanding that some hair has light highlights and some has dark value, I think that isn't really gone over too much. This is very, very broad strokes. So as a supplemental workbook, I think this would be absolutely fine to draw in, to doodle in, to create in, but I would go above and beyond and say something like find a model picture online. Google has algorithms, so it's more tailored, so I would recommend Pinterest, and say find someone that looks like you or someone from your ethnic group, your representation, your cultural heritage, your genetic, sort of somebody from the country of origin that your parents are from. You could tie it to some, like, creating a family tree and doing genealogy or something like that, and then really build upon that to make it for everyone, because it's really hard. When you do a publication, it's really hard to try and meet all audiences. But this just looks really advanced. From here to here, looks really advanced to me. I'm okay with this, because I do so many portraits all year long. Like, portraits are one of my favorite things. See, we're already on page 98. But I just think this is a really good supplement. And this kind of lends itself to being drawn in. So I don't know, as a library book, it's okay. I just think this might be something that people would want to purchase to actually create and draw in and try and figure out. The other thing to note with books like this, so here's the final page, is that when you're drawing and learning to draw from drawing books, you're learning to draw from somebody else's illustration style. Now, finding your own drawing, illustration, painting style is a whole nother video on its own that I can make later down the road, because that's kind of, that's more complicated than a 10-minute video allows. But you're learning how to draw faces from her drawing style, from her penmanship style. And when kids go to do this, if it doesn't look quite like what they're drawing, it can be very frustrating. Kids have a different level of patience than adults, and that needs to be taken into account. So if they draw a portrait and it doesn't look anything like this doesn't make their portrait wrong, and it doesn't make their portrait bad or incorrect. It's just, they just drew a portrait that's more aligned with their style and their hand and how they draw and create. And that's something you need to keep in mind too as an adult when looking at books like this, where it is drawn, an illustrator drew this to teach you. It's very easy to compare what you do to what they've done, and comparison is the thief of joy. So if it doesn't look the same, or yours is not quite as proportionate, know that there are people that aren't proportionate. There are people whose eyes aren't one eye width apart. So just take all this with a grain of salt. This would just be really fun to doodle on, to do quick sketches. But know that this is in their style. I actually recommend going to the sculpting section of the library and picking up modeling books of faces, because you get more bone structure. And that's not in a style, that's like in a scientific fact of where bones are, the mandible, the cheekbones and things. And that can be quite helpful for learning to draw portraits. So I hope this little review helped. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.